While the brain operates on just 20 watts of power, the equivalent of a dim light bulb, Neuralink has engineered something extraordinary. 3,000 electrodes thinner than human hair, a robot surgeon with micron-level precision, and a wireless interface that could redefine what it means to be human. Tonight, we dive into the silent revolution happening inside our skulls, where thought becomes action and paralysis meets its match. Before we venture into this neural frontier, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely find value in what we explore here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world as we unpack these extraordinary developments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey through the labyrinth of the human mind. Picture this. You're completely paralyzed from the neck down, unable to move your arms, legs, or even turn your head. Yet somehow you're playing chess online, controlling a computer cursor with the precision of a master, and typing messages faster than most people with fully functioning hands. This isn't science fiction. This is Nolan Arbor's reality, and it's happening right now through a technology that sounds like it was ripped from the pages of a cyberpunk novel. In January 2024, surgeons drilled a coin-sized hole in Nolan's skull and implanted 1,024 electrodes directly into his motor cortex. These aren't crude metal probes jabbed into brain tissue. These are hair-thin threads, each one positioned with surgical precision by a robot that can navigate around blood vessels with the delicacy of a master artist and the accuracy of a machine. The device they implanted, called telepathy, weighs less than a nickel, but processes more neural data than some supercomputers from just a few decades ago. The transformation was immediate and profound. Before his Neuralink implant, Nolan controlled a computer cursor using a mouth stick, a process that was exhausting, slow, and physically demanding. The simple act of sending an email or playing a game became a monumental effort that left him drained and frustrated. But 8 months after the surgery, he was traveling to Paris to open a major speed chess championship, his thoughts flowing seamlessly into digital commands. What makes this even more remarkable is the journey that brought us here. For decades, brain-computer interfaces existed primarily in research labs, crude devices that required external wires, bulky equipment, and constant medical supervision. They were proof-of-concept technologies that demonstrated possibility, but offered little practical hope for the millions of people living with paralysis, ALS, or other conditions that steal the body's ability to move while leaving the mind intact. Neuralink didn't just improve on existing technology, they reimagined it entirely. 6 microwatts of power. To put that in perspective, your smartphone uses about 1,000 times more power just to stay connected to Wi-Fi. This extraordinary efficiency is achieved through custom-designed chips that compress neurological data up to 200 times, making wireless transmission not just possible, but practical. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. About a month after Nolan's surgery, up to 85% of the threads implanted in his brain began to retract, pulling away from the neural tissue they were meant to monitor. It was a potentially devastating setback that could have ended the experiment before it truly began. In the high-stakes world of brain surgery, such complications often mean additional operations, increased risk, and uncertain outcomes. Instead of rushing back to the operating room, Neuralink's engineers did something extraordinary. They reworked the software, they modified the recording algorithms to be more sensitive to signals from groups of neurons, improved the way these signals were converted into cursor movements, and enhanced the user interface. Not only did they restore Nolan's functionality, they actually improved it. Despite having fewer connected threads, his performance exceeded his original capabilities. It was a testament to the power of adaptive engineering and the resilience of both human determination and neural plasticity. The second patient, known only as Alex, received his implant in August 2024. His surgery went flawlessly, with no thread retraction issues. Alex has demonstrated even more remarkable capabilities, using his neural interface to study languages, perform complex mathematical calculations, and control external devices with thought alone. In one particularly striking demonstration, he controlled a robotic hand to play rock, paper, scissors, and later moved an actual Tesla Optimus robot. The precision and speed of his control suggested that the brain-computer interface wasn't just restoring lost function, it was potentially enhancing human capability beyond normal limits. This isn't just about moving cursors or playing games. The implications ripple through every aspect of human experience. For people with ALS, who gradually lose the ability to speak, move, and eventually breathe, Neuralink offers the possibility of maintaining communication and control even as the disease progresses. For stroke victims whose brains remain sharp but whose bodies no longer obey, the technology promises a bridge between intention and action. For individuals with spinal cord injuries, it could mean the difference between dependence and autonomy. But Neuralink's ambitions extend far beyond medical applications. Their second major project, called BlindSight, targets vision restoration. The device bypasses damaged eyes and optic nerves entirely, sending visual information directly to the visual cortex. Elon Musk has claimed that BlindSight could eventually enable people to see in infrared, ultraviolet, or even radar wavelengths, essentially giving humans superhuman visual capabilities. While critics argue these claims are overblown, the FDA has granted BlindSight breakthrough device designation, acknowledging its potential to treat life-threatening conditions. The technology behind these achievements is staggering in its complexity and elegance. The R1 surgical robot that implants the neural threads operates with precision measured in microns. It can insert 64 threads containing 16 electrodes each into a living brain in about 15 minutes, navigating around blood vessels and avoiding critical structures with accuracy that surpasses human capability. Each thread is only a few microns wide, thinner than the finest human hair, yet strong enough to penetrate the brain's protective layers and maintain electrical contact with neurons. The surgical process itself reads like science fiction. The robot creates a precise map of the brain's surface, identifying blood vessels and optimal insertion points. It then uses a needle finer than a sewing machine's to push the flexible threads through the tough dura layer and into the cortex beneath. The threads are so thin that they cause minimal tissue damage, and their flexibility allows them to move with the brain's natural motion without breaking or causing inflammation. What emerges from this fusion of neuroscience, engineering, and surgical precision is something unprecedented in human history. A direct, high-bandwidth connection between the biological computer in our skulls and the digital world we've created. The N1 chip doesn't just read brain signals, it interprets them, learning to distinguish between the neural patterns associated with different intended movements or commands. Over time, the system becomes more responsive, more intuitive, essentially learning the unique language of each individual brain. The data flowing through these connections tells a story of human adaptation that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago. When Nolan thinks about moving his hand to click a mouse, His motor cortex generates specific patterns of electrical activity. The Neuralink electrodes detect these patterns, the onboard processors decode them in real time, and the wireless transmitter sends the commands to a computer. The entire process happens in milliseconds, fast enough that the delay between thought and action becomes virtually imperceptible. This seamless integration between mind and machine represents more than just technological achievement. It suggests a future where the boundaries between biological and artificial intelligence begin to blur. Neuralink's ultimate vision includes not just medical applications, but cognitive enhancement, allowing humans to interface directly with artificial intelligence systems, access information at the speed of thought, and potentially even share experiences directly from one mind to another. The company's third major project, the Convoy study, will test the use of brain-computer interfaces to control robotic arms and legs. This could restore not just digital freedom, but physical freedom, allowing paralyzed individuals to manipulate objects in the real world through thought alone. The potential applications are limitless. Quadriplegic individuals could feed themselves, hug their loved ones, or perform complex tasks with robotic assistance that responds to their neural commands as naturally as their original limbs once did. Yet for all its promise, Neuralink's technology raises profound questions about the nature of human identity and the future of our species. If thoughts can be read and transmitted, what happens to mental privacy? If artificial memories can be implanted, how do we distinguish between authentic and artificial experiences? If human intelligence can be augmented indefinitely, what does it mean to be human? These aren't distant philosophical concerns. They're immediate practical questions that society will need to grapple with as brain-computer interfaces become more sophisticated and widespread. The current patients represent the beginning of a transformation that could ultimately affect every human being on the planet. We're not just witnessing the treatment of medical conditions, we're observing the first steps toward a new form of human existence. The engineering challenges that Neuralink has overcome hint at even greater possibilities ahead. The current system requires users to imagine movements to control external devices. Future versions might read intentions directly, allowing people to control multiple devices simultaneously or interface with complex systems through pure thought. The bandwidth of current brain-computer interfaces is still limited compared to the brain's full capacity. As electrode density increases and signal processing improves, the connection between mind and machine will become richer and more nuanced. Consider the broader implications for human capability. Today's internet allows us to access vast amounts of information, but we're still limited by the speed at which we can type, read, or speak. A mature brain-computer interface could allow direct access to digital information at the speed of thought. Learning new skills, accessing memories, or solving complex problems could be enhanced by seamless integration with artificial intelligence systems. The ripple effects extend beyond individual enhancement to societal transformation. Education could be revolutionized if knowledge could be downloaded directly to the brain. Scientific research could accelerate if researchers could share insights and data through direct neural connection. Communication itself might evolve beyond language to direct transmission of thoughts, emotions, and experiences. Yet, with each breakthrough comes new responsibility. The power to read and influence neural activity is perhaps the most intimate form of technology ever developed. Unlike smartphones or computers that we can set aside, brain implants become part of us. The data they collect represents the most private aspects of human experience, our thoughts, intentions, and memories. Protecting this information from misuse while enabling beneficial applications will require unprecedented cooperation between technologists, ethicists, and policymakers. The current Neuralink patients are pioneers in the truest sense, explorers of a new frontier that exists at the intersection of biology and technology. Their experiences, both triumphant and challenging, are writing the first chapters of a story that could ultimately redefine what it means to be human. Each successful command, each restored capability, each moment of seamless integration between mind and machine brings us closer to a future that seemed impossible just a few years ago. As we stand on the threshold of this neural revolution, we're reminded that the most profound changes often begin quietly, in small rooms with brave individuals willing to take extraordinary risks for the possibility of extraordinary rewards. The silent revolution happening in our skulls may ultimately prove to be the most significant technological advancement in human history, not because of the complexity of the engineering involved, but because of its potential to unlock the full capacity of the human mind and extend our reach into realms we're only beginning to imagine. The threads are thin, the signals are subtle, but the implications are vast. We're not just building better medical devices, we're constructing bridges between the biological and digital worlds that could transform every aspect of human experience. But here's where things get genuinely unsettling. We're not just talking about reading brain signals anymore. We're talking about writing them back. Neuralink's bidirectional capabilities mean the N1 chip doesn't just listen to your neurons, it can speak to them. Think about that for a moment. A device smaller than a coin, wirelessly powered, sitting flush against your skull, capable of both receiving and transmitting electrical signals directly to your brain tissue. This isn't science fiction whispered in laboratory corridors. This is happening right now in real human beings, changing how we think about the very nature of consciousness itself. The implications spiral outward like ripples in dark water. If we can decode movement intentions and translate them into robotic commands, what else can we decode? Memory formation, emotional states, the quiet conversations you have with yourself when no one else is listening. And if we can write signals back into the brain, what becomes possible? Artificial memories, manufactured emotions, the ability to literally change someone's mind without them ever knowing it happened. Nolan Arbor discovered this firsthand during his early sessions with the Neuralink interface. Beyond just moving cursors and playing chess, he began experiencing something unprecedented. Dreams that felt more vivid than reality. Moments where he couldn't distinguish between thoughts that originated in his own mind and signals that might have been amplified or modified by the device. The boundaries between self and machine weren't just blurring, they were dissolving entirely. The technical specifications tell only part of the story. Those 3,072 electrodes aren't randomly placed. They're positioned with surgical precision in regions of the motor cortex responsible for intention, the fleeting moment between deciding to move and actually moving. But the motor cortex connects to everything: memory centers, emotional processing regions, the very networks that create what we call personality. Touch one thread, and the entire web trembles. Dr. Shady's team made a disturbing discovery during the early trials. The brain doesn't just adapt to the Neuralink interface, it begins to depend on it. Neural pathways that once operated independently start routing through the device. It becomes less of an external tool and more of an integrated organ. Patients reported feeling incomplete when the device was powered down for maintenance, as if part of their mind had simply vanished. This is where the silent revolution reveals its true nature. We're not just enhancing human capabilities, we're fundamentally altering what it means to be human. The line between biological and artificial intelligence isn't just blurring, it's being erased. And once that line disappears, there's no going back. Consider the Convoy study, where Neuralink participants will control robotic arms through pure thought. But here's what they don't tell you in the press releases. The robotic arm doesn't just respond to your intentions, it influences them. The feedback loop between brain and machine creates new neural patterns, new ways of thinking, new desires you never had before. Patients begin dreaming about having multiple arms. They start thinking in terms of mechanical precision rather than human intuition. The blindsight device pushes these boundaries even further. When you artificially stimulate the visual cortex, you're not just restoring sight. You're creating an entirely new form of perception. Users report seeing colors that don't exist, experiencing depth in impossible ways, perceiving electromagnetic fields as visible auras around electronic devices. They're not just seeing again, they're seeing beyond the spectrum of human experience. And then there's the question that keeps neuroscientists awake at night. What happens when these devices start talking to each other? When one Neuralink user's thoughts can directly influence another's? We're approaching the birth of a collective consciousness, a hive mind connected not by biology, but by silicon and software. The early results are already showing signs of this convergence. Alex, the second Neuralink patient, reported experiencing what he described as ghost memories during his sessions with the device. Memories that felt completely real, but belonged to someone else entirely. When researchers investigated, they discovered that Alex's device had briefly synchronized with data patterns from Nolan's neural recordings. For a few moments, Alex wasn't just himself. He was experiencing fragments of another person's consciousness. This isn't a glitch in the system, it's a feature. Neuralink's ultimate vision extends far beyond treating paralysis or blindness. They're building the infrastructure for human consciousness to transcend individual minds. The ability to share thoughts, memories, and experiences directly from brain to brain. To upload and download skills like software updates. To back up and restore human consciousness like files on a computer. But consciousness isn't just data. It's the sum total of every experience, every emotion, every fleeting thought that makes you uniquely you. And when you start treating consciousness as programmable code, you inevitably ask the question, who controls the programmer? The answer should terrify you. Because the same technology that can restore movement to the paralyzed can be used to control the movements of the healthy. The same interface that can cure blindness can be used to manipulate what people see. The same device that promises to eliminate depression could be weaponized to induce it. We're standing at the threshold of the most profound transformation in human history. Not evolution, but revolution. The birth of a new species that exists somewhere between human and machine, organic and artificial, individual and collective. And unlike biological evolution, this transformation won't take millions of years. It's happening right now, one neural implant at a time, in the quiet laboratories where the future of human consciousness is being written in code. The silence isn't coming from secrecy. The research reveals fascinating technological achievements of Neuralink that seem almost science fictional, yet are very real. From the precision surgical robot that can implant thousands of electrodes with microscopic accuracy to the real-world success stories of patients like Nolan Arbor, who went from paralysis to controlling computers with thought alone, we're witnessing a revolution that's happening largely in silence. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. The most profound implications of Neuralink aren't just medical, they're fundamentally existential. As we stand on the threshold of direct brain-computer interfaces becoming mainstream, we're confronting questions that would have sounded like pure fantasy just decades ago. Consider this. If your thoughts can control external devices, what happens when external devices can influence your thoughts? The technology that today helps paralyzed patients move robotic arms tomorrow might allow direct memory uploads, artificial skill downloads, or even shared consciousness networks. We're not just talking about treating disease anymore. We're talking about fundamentally altering what it means to be human. The silent revolution isn't just about the technology itself. It's about how quietly these changes are occurring, while most of the world remains focused on more visible technological shifts. While we debate social media algorithms and smartphone addiction, engineers are literally building bridges between human consciousness and artificial intelligence. What's particularly striking is how the early patients describe their experience. They don't feel like cyborgs or enhanced humans. They feel more like themselves than they have in years. The technology doesn't replace their humanity, it restores it. But as the capabilities expand beyond medical applications, that relationship between human and machine will become increasingly complex. The brain, with its 86 billion neurons and trillions of connections, represents the final frontier of human enhancement. Neuralink's 3,000 electrodes are just the beginning. Future iterations may involve millions of connection points, creating a bandwidth between brain and computer that could fundamentally change how we think, learn, remember, and even dream. This isn't just about individuals anymore. When direct brain-to-brain communication becomes possible, when memories can be shared as easily as sending a text message, when knowledge can be transmitted instantly across minds, we're looking at the potential emergence of a collective human consciousness. A hive mind that preserves individual identity while enabling unprecedented collaboration. The implications ripple outward into every aspect of human society. Education could become instantaneous. Mental illness might be addressed through direct neural intervention. The boundary between biological and artificial intelligence could blur beyond recognition. We might see the emergence of enhanced humans who think faster, remember more perfectly, and process information in ways that seem supernatural to unenhanced minds. Yet all of this is happening through the quiet work of engineers, neuroscientists, and brave patients who are willing to be the first to cross these bridges between human and machine. There are no dramatic announcements, no worldwide summits, no global debates about the ethics of consciousness modification. Just steady progress, one successful implant at a time. The silent revolution of Neuralink represents perhaps the most significant technological shift in human history, not because of what it is today, but because of what it's becoming. We're witnessing the first tentative steps toward a post-human future, and most of us don't even realize it's happening. The question isn't whether this technology will transform humanity. The air was thick with the promise of change, and in the sterile laboratories of Neuralink, the future was taking shape one electrode at a time. While the world slept, a revolution was unfolding in the shadows of silicon and flesh, where the boundary between human consciousness and artificial intelligence was dissolving like morning mist. This wasn't science fiction anymore. This was happening now, quietly, methodically, and with implications that would reshape the very essence of what it means to be human. The first human patients were already walking among us, their minds enhanced by threads thinner than human hair, their thoughts translated into digital commands with precision that bordered on the miraculous. Noland Arbor could move a computer cursor with nothing but intention. Alex was playing video games using pure thought. A third patient, whose identity remained shrouded in secrecy, was pushing the boundaries even further. These weren't just medical breakthroughs. They were the first tentative steps toward a post-human future. But as the technology advanced at breathtaking speed, fundamental questions emerged from the shadows. What happens when the line between organic thought and artificial processing disappears entirely? When memories can be uploaded, downloaded, and shared like files on a computer? When the distinction between individual consciousness and collective intelligence becomes meaningless? Neuralink's silent revolution wasn't just changing how paralyzed patients interact with the world. It was rewriting the rules of human existence itself. The N1 chip represented more than just medical innovation. Each device contained enough computing power to process thought at the speed of light, enough bandwidth to stream consciousness itself, and enough precision to read the whispered intentions of individual neurons. The surgical robot that implanted these devices moved with an accuracy that human hands could never achieve, guided by algorithms that could map the landscape of the mind with cartographic precision. This wasn't just about restoring lost abilities. This was about transcending human limitations entirely. Yet beneath the promise lay deeper currents of transformation that few were discussing. The technology that could restore sight to the blind could also grant superhuman vision. The system that allowed paralyzed patients to control computers could eventually allow anyone to interface directly with artificial intelligence. The breakthrough that helped the speechless communicate could one day enable telepathic connection between minds. What began as therapy was evolving into enhancement, and enhancement was the first step towards something unprecedented in human history. The implications rippled outward like concentric circles in still water. In boardrooms across Silicon Valley, investors spoke in hushed tones about the next phase of human evolution. In government facilities, officials debated the national security implications of thought-controlled technology. In philosophical circles, scholars wrestled with questions that had no precedent. If thoughts could be read, was privacy dead? If memories could be shared, was individual identity an illusion? If consciousness could be augmented, were we still human? But perhaps the most profound shift was happening in the quiet moments between breakthrough and implementation. Neuralink's technology wasn't just changing what humans could do, it was changing what humans could become. The company's Blindsight project promised to restore vision to those who had never seen, but the technology could theoretically grant sight beyond the visible spectrum. Infrared, ultraviolet, even electromagnetic fields could become as natural as color to the enhanced human eye. The robotic arm projects weren't just about restoring movement. They were about extending human capability into realms of strength and precision that biology had never achieved. And in the deeper laboratories, where the most sensitive research took place behind closed doors, scientists were exploring possibilities that made current achievements seem primitive by comparison. Bidirectional brain-computer interfaces could not only read thoughts, but write them, potentially allowing artificial memories to be implanted as naturally as organic ones. Neural networks could be linked not just to computers, but to other neural networks, creating hive minds that thought with the combined processing power of multiple brains. The boundary between self and other, between individual and collective, was becoming increasingly meaningless. The technology was advancing so rapidly that regulatory frameworks couldn't keep pace. While bioethicists debated the implications of neural enhancement, the enhanced were already walking among us. While philosophers questioned the nature of consciousness, consciousness itself was being rewritten in real time. The revolution wasn't coming. It was here, quiet and unstoppable, transforming humanity one implant at a time. In sleep laboratories across the world, researchers monitored the dreams of the enhanced, watching as artificial and organic thoughts blended in ways that defied traditional understanding. The dreams themselves were changing, becoming more vivid, more controllable, more connected to external networks. Some patients reported shared dreams, common experiences that suggested their neural implants were creating connections that transcended individual consciousness. Others described visions of information flowing like rivers of light, their enhanced minds processing data in ways that felt more like mystical experience than medical treatment. The children born into this new world would never know a time when thought and technology were separate domains. They would grow up assuming that mental enhancement was as natural as education, that neural interfaces were as common as smartphones, that the boundaries between mind and machine were historical artifacts rather than fundamental truths. For them, the current debates about human identity and technological integration would seem as quaint as arguments about whether automobiles would frighten horses. Yet even as the technology promised unprecedented liberation from the constraints of biology, it raised equally unprecedented questions about the constraints of consciousness itself. If thoughts could be hacked, were minds secure? If memories could be edited, was truth objective? If consciousness could be copied, was the soul unique? These weren't abstract philosophical puzzles anymore. They were practical engineering challenges being solved in real time by teams of neuroscientists, computer engineers, and ethicists working at the bleeding edge of human possibility. The silent revolution was accelerating, and its implications were spreading far beyond the medical applications that had justified its beginning. In the depths of night, while most of the world remained unaware, the future of human consciousness was being written in code, implemented in silicon, and tested in the minds of volunteers who had become something more than human and something other than machine. They were the first citizens of a new world, and their thoughts were the blueprint for humanity's next evolutionary leap. The revolution was silent because it didn't need to announce itself. It was rewriting reality from the inside out, one synapse at a time, one thought at a time, one enhanced human at a time. The brain is both more complex and more fragile than anyone imagined. While Neuralink's precision robotic surgery can thread thousands of electrodes through neural tissue with micron-level accuracy, the real revolution isn't happening in the operating room. It's happening in the space between thought and action, in the microscopic gaps where electrical signals become human intention. Think about what we've witnessed so far. Noland Arbor, paralyzed from the chest down, now controls computers with pure thought. His brain activity flows wirelessly through 3,072 electrodes, each one smaller than a human hair, translating neural impulses into cursor movements with stunning precision. Alex, the second patient, has gone even further, controlling robotic hands and even Tesla's Optimus robot through nothing but concentrated intention. These aren't just medical breakthroughs. They're previews of a world where the boundaries between mind and machine dissolve entirely. But here's where things get genuinely unsettling. The technology isn't just reading thoughts anymore, it's beginning to write them back. Early experiments with bidirectional brain stimulation suggest that Neuralink's threads could potentially implant memories, enhance cognitive abilities, or even share thoughts directly between minds. Imagine downloading a new skill, like learning a language, or uploading your memories to preserve them forever. The line between biological consciousness and artificial intelligence starts to blur when your thoughts can be backed up, edited, and restored like computer files. The implications spiral outward in ways that should make us pause. If thoughts can be read and written, who owns your mental privacy? If memories can be enhanced or altered, what happens to personal identity? If consciousness can be shared or transferred, are we still human in any meaningful sense? These aren't distant philosophical questions anymore. They're engineering problems being solved in real time by teams of neuroscientists working with unprecedented precision and funding. Consider the broader picture emerging from Neuralink's expanding trials. The blindsight device promises to restore vision by directly stimulating the visual cortex, potentially allowing people to see in infrared, ultraviolet, or even radar wavelengths. The Convoy study aims to connect paralyzed patients to robotic arms for full physical mobility. Each breakthrough represents another step toward what Elon Musk calls a neural mesh, where human and artificial intelligence merge into something entirely new. The technology is advancing faster than our ability to understand its consequences. While we celebrate patients regaining movement and sight, we're simultaneously creating the infrastructure for a fundamental transformation of human consciousness itself. The threads being implanted today could become the highways for a tomorrow where thoughts travel instantly between minds, where artificial memories feel as real as lived experiences, and where the distinction between human and machine intelligence becomes not just blurred, but meaningless. This is Neuralink's silent revolution. Not the flashy headlines about paralyzed patients moving cursors, but the quiet, methodical construction of a bridge between biological and digital consciousness. Every electrode placed, every signal decoded, every successful neural interface brings us closer to a moment when the human brain becomes just another node in a vast, interconnected network of intelligence. The question isn't whether this technology will transform humanity. The question is whether we'll recognize ourselves on the other side of that transformation. In the shadowy realm of neural engineering, where the line between human and machine grows thinner by the day, Neuralink's third-generation brain-computer interface represents something far more unsettling than technological advancement. It represents the quiet death of human privacy as we know it. Picture this. You're lying in bed, thinking about that embarrassing moment from high school, or perhaps fantasizing about your coworker, or maybe just wondering if you remembered to lock the front door. Now imagine that every single one of those thoughts could be recorded, analyzed, and potentially shared with others. This isn't science fiction anymore. This is the reality we're sleepwalking into. The technology itself is breathtaking in its precision. Those 3,072 electrodes aren't just reading crude brain signals anymore. They're developing the capability to decode specific thoughts, emotions, and memories with startling accuracy. Early trials show the system can distinguish between different types of mental imagery, recognize when someone is trying to suppress a thought, and even detect the formation of new memories as they're being created. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Unlike other medical devices that treat specific conditions and then switch off, brain-computer interfaces are designed to be always-on systems. They're meant to integrate seamlessly into daily life, constantly monitoring and interpreting neural activity. The very feature that makes them so revolutionary, their ability to read the brain in real time, also makes them the ultimate surveillance device. Consider the implications for mental privacy. We've grown accustomed to the idea that our phones and computers can be hacked, our emails read, our browsing history exposed. But imagine if your actual thoughts could be intercepted. Your deepest fears, your secret desires, your private judgments about the people around you, all potentially accessible to anyone who gains unauthorized access to your neural implant. The companies developing these technologies promise robust security measures, encrypted thought transmission, and strict privacy controls. But we've heard these promises before. We were told our social media data would remain private. We were assured that our location information wouldn't be tracked. We were promised that our personal communications would stay personal. How many of those promises have held up under the pressure of profit margins and government requests? The neural interface companies face the same fundamental challenge that has plagued every tech company before them. The tension between user privacy and business models built on data collection. Neural data represents the ultimate treasure trove of personal information. It's not just what you choose to share or search for, it's the unfiltered contents of your mind. The commercial value of such data would be unprecedented. Marketing companies could analyze your genuine emotional responses to advertisements, not just what you claim to feel. Insurance companies might assess your actual health anxieties and risk-taking tendencies. Employers could evaluate your true feelings about your job and colleagues. Governments could monitor for dissenting thoughts or revolutionary ideas. The potential for abuse is limitless. But perhaps the most insidious threat isn't external hacking or corporate surveillance. It's the gradual erosion of our inner sanctum, the one place that has always remained truly private. When we know our thoughts can be monitored, we begin to self-censor even in our own minds. We start policing our internal monologue, editing our emotions, curating our memories. We become strangers to ourselves. This phenomenon, known as the chilling effect, has already been documented in relation to digital surveillance. People change their online behavior when they know they're being watched. They search for different things, communicate more carefully, avoid certain topics entirely. Now imagine this effect applied to your thoughts themselves. When the last bastion of privacy falls, what happens to the human spirit? The technology is advancing faster than our legal and ethical frameworks can adapt. Current privacy laws were written for a world where thoughts remained safely locked inside our skulls. They're woefully inadequate for protecting neural data. We need new categories of rights, new forms of legal protection, new international agreements about the sanctity of human consciousness. Some argue that we'll adapt, that privacy is already dead anyway, that the benefits of neural interfaces outweigh the risks. They point to the paralyzed patients who can now control robotic arms with their thoughts, the blind individuals who might regain sight through direct neural stimulation, the countless neurological conditions that could be treated or cured. These benefits are real and profound. But at what cost? We're being asked to trade the last remnant of human privacy for technological convenience and medical advancement. It's the ultimate devil's bargain, wrapped in the language of progress and healing. The most frightening aspect of this transformation is how normal it will seem. Just as we've gradually accepted the erosion of digital privacy, we'll likely adapt to neural surveillance. Each generation will grow up with slightly less mental privacy than the last, until the very concept of truly private thoughts becomes as foreign as handwritten letters or rotary phones. The children being born today might live in a world where mental privacy is seen as an antiquated notion, where the idea of thoughts that can't be shared or monitored seems as strange to them as living without electricity seems to us. They'll integrate neural interfaces as naturally as we learn to use smartphones, never knowing what they've lost. This isn't inevitable. We still have choices to make, regulations to write, boundaries to establish, but the window for action is closing rapidly. Once neural interfaces become commonplace, once the infrastructure for thought monitoring is in place, once we've normalized the idea of shareable consciousness, there will be no going back. The death of mental privacy won't come with fanfare or revolution. It will arrive quietly, one neural implant at a time, one small compromise after another, until one day we wake up in a world where our thoughts are no longer our own. And by then, it will be too late to remember what we've lost. We stand at a crossroads in human history. Down one path lies unprecedented technological capability, medical miracles, and human enhancement beyond our wildest dreams. Down the other lies the preservation of our most fundamental human right, the sovereignty of our own minds. The choice we make will echo through the centuries, defining what it means to be human in an age of artificial intelligence and neural engineering. The question isn't whether we can build these technologies. We clearly can. The question is whether we should, and if we do, how we can preserve some fragment of the human soul in the process. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Because what happens when the boundaries between human and machine begin to dissolve? When the very essence of what makes us human becomes negotiable? We're standing at the threshold of something unprecedented, something that could fundamentally alter the trajectory of our species forever. The most unsettling aspect of Neuralink's technology isn't what it can do today. It's what it promises for tomorrow. Because while we celebrate restored vision and regained mobility, we're quietly opening doors that may never be closed again. The same pathways that carry healing signals can carry something else entirely: control. Consider this carefully. Every thought you've ever had, every memory you cherish, every emotion that defines your inner world, all of it is essentially electrical activity in your brain. And if that activity can be read, decoded, and interpreted by machines, then it stands to reason that it can also be influenced, modified, or even rewritten. The research is already underway. Scientists are exploring how neural implants might treat depression by stimulating specific brain regions. They're investigating whether memories can be enhanced or traumatic experiences erased. The line between therapy and enhancement grows thinner with each breakthrough. And enhancement, once it begins, rarely stops at restoration. Imagine a world where your thoughts are no longer entirely your own, where the line between your organic neural activity and artificial augmentation becomes so blurred that you can't distinguish between a genuine emotion and a digitally induced one, where your memories might be subtly altered, your decision-making processes influenced by algorithms designed to optimize not your happiness, but your productivity, your compliance, your consumption. This isn't science fiction. This is the logical progression of a technology that can both read and write to the human brain, because the same implants that restore sight to the blind could theoretically implant false memories. The same devices that help paralyzed patients control robotic limbs could potentially control the patients themselves. And perhaps most chilling of all, this transformation might happen so gradually, so seamlessly, that we won't even notice it occurring. Each new capability will be presented as progress, as healing, as human enhancement. Each step will seem reasonable, beneficial, necessary. Until one day we wake up to discover that the most private space in human existence, the sanctuary of our own minds, has become a networked, monitored, potentially manipulated extension of the digital world. The greatest threat posed by Neuralink isn't mechanical failure or surgical complications. It's the possibility that in our rush to transcend human limitations, we might accidentally transcend humanity itself. That in connecting our brains to machines, we might lose the very essence of what makes consciousness sacred, private, and unmistakably our own. This is the silent revolution, not the triumphant merger of human and machine, but the quiet surrender of the last frontier of human privacy. And unlike previous technological revolutions, there may be no going back from this one. And in that dark silence lies perhaps the greatest irony of our technological age. We have built machines that promise to expand human consciousness, yet we may be surrendering the very essence of what makes us conscious at all. The patients who've demonstrated these remarkable capabilities, moving cursors with thought alone, controlling robotic arms, even beginning to restore sight to the blind, they represent just the opening notes of a symphony that could either elevate humanity or fundamentally alter what it means to be human. Because Neuralink isn't stopping at restoration. The company's ultimate vision extends far beyond medical applications into the realm of human enhancement. Imagine downloading languages directly into your brain, accessing the internet through thought alone, or sharing memories and experiences with others as easily as sending a text message. But this technological convergence raises questions that penetrate to the core of human identity. When thoughts can be read and potentially written, what happens to the concept of free will? When memories can be shared or modified, what defines individual experience? When the boundary between biological and artificial intelligence dissolves, what remains essentially human? The early patients at Neuralink are pioneers, but they're also test subjects in an experiment whose full implications we're only beginning to understand. Their courage in accepting these devices has opened doors that can never be closed. Every successful demonstration of thought-controlled technology moves us closer to a world where the line between mind and machine becomes increasingly blurred. The neural dust settles, but the questions multiply. In laboratories around the world, researchers are racing to decode the final mysteries of consciousness itself. Some believe we're approaching a technological singularity, where human and artificial intelligence merge into something unprecedented. Others warn that we're sleepwalking toward a future where privacy, autonomy, and perhaps even free will become artifacts of a pre-digital age. What began as a medical mission to restore function to paralyzed patients has evolved into something far more ambitious and potentially transformative. The same technology that allows a quadriplegic to control a computer cursor could eventually allow governments to monitor thoughts, corporations to influence decisions, or individuals to alter the fundamental nature of human consciousness. The patients who volunteered for these early trials believed they were helping to restore what disease and injury had taken away. They may have inadvertently participated in the first steps toward redefining what it means to be human. Their neural signals, translated into digital commands, represent more than medical breakthroughs. They represent the beginning of a new chapter in human evolution, one written not by natural selection, but by silicon and code. As we stand at this technological crossroads, the choices we make about brain-computer interfaces will echo through generations. The quiet revolution happening in Neuralink's laboratories isn't just changing individual lives, it's potentially reshaping the trajectory of our species. The question isn't whether this technology will advance, but whether we'll advance with it while retaining what we value most about being human. In the end, perhaps the greatest mystery isn't how to read minds or control machines with thoughts. Perhaps it's how to preserve the essence of human consciousness in an age when that consciousness is becoming increasingly intertwined with artificial systems. The Slumber Lab awakens us to possibilities we never imagined, but it also forces us to confront futures we may not be prepared to face. The revolution is no longer coming. It's here, humming quietly in the neural networks of volunteers who dared to let machines listen to their thoughts. And in that humming, we hear the first whispers of what humanity might become.